Hey, how you guys doing? Okay, welcome back to another episode of Soldiers Talk the Podcast. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant McPherson, and on this show, we discuss military topics with current and prior service members. Today, I have a fellow YouTuber. I have Christopher Chaos. Chris, kind of go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, sure. So, Christopher Chaos. I was in the United States Army for a little over 10 years. I deployed twice to Iraq. And while I was in the Army, I kind of got involved with liking to do video production, stuff like that. So, I kind of did that throughout my Army career. As an 88 mic, though, I was an 88 mic. And so on the side, I would do video stuff. And then that continued on after I got out of the Army. And then in 2017, kind of started just focusing on Army related content for YouTube.
Okay, so what was your MOS in the Army?
I was the 88 Mike, so I was a motor transportation operator. Even though I think most of the time I did more of a was it a 69 Bravo? I forget what it is, the ammo supply specialist, because I did a lot of ammo stuff, but we didn't really have ammo people in a couple of my units I was in. So most of my Army career I was doing ammo stuff, hauling ammo and processing ammo and doing everything. But 88 Mike.
Okay, so basically, so when did you join? I want to start from the beginning. So
Yeah,
where you originally from?
originally from California, so I lived in a real small town called Bishop. It's like pretty close to the kind of close to the Nevada border. It only takes about 30 minutes to get to the Nevada border from Bishop. It's near Mammoth Mountains. That's only 30 minutes away, and it's about 4 hours north of Los Angeles. So I originally was from that area, and then joined the army pretty much right after high school.
Okay, so you joined right after high school.
Yep.
Okay, so now that you so as an 88 Mike, so what rank was you able to get make it to before you decided to like transition out?
I was
On
an
the,
E5P or Sergeant P.
okay, okay,
So I had everything. I had already done the board. I had
mhm,
already done the non-commissioned officer course, but I didn't have the points at that time. The points for 88 Mike for staff sergeant was 798, and I was not going to be able to get that sucker.
okay. So now that y'all kind of got some background on Chris and his MOS and stuff like that. So we was gonna talk about deployments. So deployments, where have you been deployed to?
So both times was to Iraq. The first time was northern Iraq to a town called Talafar. It was kind of a little bit south of Mosul, and that was with 30 ACR. And then the second time I deployed was to Baghdad.
Okay, so what years was this?
So for Baghdad, well, so Talafar would have been 2005 to 2006, and then I went back in 2007 to 2009 because that one was a 15-month deployment to Baghdad.
Okay,
That one was long, dragged
so
down forever.
why was it 15 months?
They were trying to do this thing at that time where they wanted to make the deployments longer so that way that you'd have more time back home because before they were doing 12 months in country, 12 months back in the States, and then you go back for 12 months. So by them trying to do 15 months, it was like a test period that didn't last very long. So they were trying to do 15 months in country. That way you could do 15 months back home before you would end up deploying again. When there was like that crazy deployment pretty much every year schedule type of thing early in the Iraq, Afghanistan war type of thing.
Okay, so the process on how long was you at what station where you deployed from out of?
From both times was from Fort Carson. The first time was with their ACR out of Fort Carson before they moved to Fort Hood, Texas. Because after we came back from that deployment is when they made the move to Fort Hood. And then I stayed on Fort Carson. I reenlisted so I could stay at Carson. Plus, I didn't have enough time to go with them to Hood, and I didn't really have enough time to even stay there anyway. So they were like, "Well, you're probably going to come up on orders for Korea," which I had just come from Korea, so I didn't want to go back to Korea. So I reenlisted, so I could stay on Carson, and they moved me over to 410 Cav, which is also on Fort Carson. When the Fourth ID moved from Fort Hood to Fort Carson, because they kind of like flip flopped, switched kind of duty stations or headquarters. And so when Fourth ID switched headquarters to Fort Carson, I went to Fourth ID inside 410 Cav.
Okay, and then so the process for your first deployment. So I want to kind of get into what was your job while you was deployed. So what was your responsibilities over there?
Yeah. So the first time, most of the mission we were doing was like log packs to move like food and water and fuel and ammo and everything between the main installation we were on, which was the Talifar. And then from there, we'd go to a bunch of combat outposts to deliver supplies to them. And we'd also do humanitarian aid missions in the area. So we did a lot of that where we would do things like delivering a halal meals, like these are like special meals that like the Iraqis would eat and kind of thing, just to help people that were in need. And so we drop off food, we drop off water to different places. We'd have like pallets of water bottles that we drop off, mattresses, different other types of supplies. So we did a lot of that. A little bit of what I did for a couple of months. We had a detention facility on Talifar, and it was kind of like a processing center. So there was a little bit of that too, where we would work inside the detention facility, just really just kind of guarding the prisoners. They were kind of like in transition when they were like would get picked up during these raids. They would get held there to kind of get processed to determine, hey, was this person really involved with the scenario, or were they just in the wrong spot at the wrong time? And they would kind of do like little interviews and interrogations and everything, and then kind of make the determination from there if it was someone that needed to go process to the prison, or if they was someone that they would let go, kind of thing. So we guarded them, and that was the main thing during the first deployment. Second deployment was a lot of the same kind of thing with the log packs, just moving things around from BIOP, from Camp Liberty in Baghdad, to a lot of other fobs that we had in the area, and cops and everything in the area. And then another big part was barrier missions. So we would put like barriers around like the MSRs to try to kind of block like the enemy from putting down like IEDs on the convoys on the main routes. We would wall off some of like the cops, some of the Iraqi checkpoints and police stations, to put walls around them to try to make it harder for snipers to be able to fire into them. So we do a lot of those night missions of delivering barriers and setting those up.
Okay, so it sounds like you had a lot of responsibility as 8A Mike while you was deployed.
Yeah, a lot of time on the road too. I mean, it was definitely something where I was outside of the fob a lot, quite often out on the road and everything, and having to do mostly night missions because it was just safer at night. You didn't have to deal with the traffic, and plus people weren't supposed to be out at night anyways, so it was a lot safer to kind of work at night.
Okay, so did you experience? I'm pretty sure you experienced a lot of IDFs, right?
There was some. The first deployment, I was pretty lucky because of the way Talifar was kind of set up, where you had all of the cantonment area, and then there was like a large gap of just like kind of nothingness before you got to like the perimeter of Talifar. And so if they did fire IDF during that time frame, it wouldn't usually get to you. So you didn't really have to worry about it in their first deployment. Second deployment, because you're in the middle of Baghdad, you had to worry about it. But I was pretty fortunate. Usually, most of the time, they were landing farther away from me. I never had any issues where they landed like right nearby. You'd have the alarms that go off, and you have to go to the bunkers and take cover and stuff like that. But they were usually landing not near me or anything. So I got pretty lucky.
Okay, Chris, can you explain to the people what IDFs are and what some of the procedures that happen like once the IDF goes off?
Yeah, sure. So you have indirect fire. So a lot of times, this is what we had our kind of SOP or our kind of guidance that we had to do was we had to get full kit. So we had to throw our vests on, throw our helmet on, and then we had assigned bunkers that we would have to go to from our living areas that we'd go to, and we would go to those bunkers and just stay in place and wait for further instructions. There'd usually be like an alarm that would go off. You would hear the rounds hitting sometimes, and you'd be like, "Oh man, please!" Hopefully, it's just incoming, especially if like it's the middle of the night and you're trying to sleep, and you're like, maybe it's not incoming. Hopefully, it's outgoing. You'd always be like, "Oh, maybe it's outgoing. Maybe it's outgoing." But then the alarm would go off, and then you had to get all suited up and everything, get to the bunkers, and then eventually we had like radio systems and stuff like that, and they would kind of give the all clear over the radio, and they would say people they can come back out. And then if you were not in the living areas, then we had other bunkers throughout the fob that you would have to kind of like occupy, and somebody would be in the area to give the all clear.
Mm. So 9 times out of 10, basically, did you were you say you wasn't nowhere around when the IDF actually hit, right?
No, not in my immediate area. It was always kind of a little ways out. It was usually you could hear it, and a couple of times you can kind of feel it too. But it was I never, of all the incidents that did happen, none of them were like in an area that was like close to me that was like a danger. It was always just precautionary kind of a thing because they could be trying to bracket you in or trying to hone in on your area kind of a thing. Most of the time, they had like a little lake that was there. There was a couple of times it landed like near the lake. which wasn't really occupied very much. There was a little mountain right there on Biop that sometimes they would hit that little mountain right there because it was an easy target they could see, and there was just some antennas up there for camo, so it would jack up the antennas sometimes. But the living areas, when I was there, we got pretty lucky, and we didn't have anything ever hit the living area.
Okay. So that was so you had three deployments.
Two, two deployments.
Okay, two. One 15-month, one 9-month, right?
12-month and a 15.
12 and a 15. Okay. So with that being deployments, so once y'all got when y'all redeployed, what year was that?
From for the second deployment,
Yeah.
that one was in 2007 to 2009.
Okay.
So that one, because like we ended up leaving, like I think it was late 2007, and then we were there for the rest of 2007, and then all of 2008, and then came back kind of in the first few months, like February or something like that of 2009.
So you didn't have no crazy experience while you was over there, right? Like it wasn't nothing that stood out to you, or
Uh,
like I know you over there with it's a lot of cultural differences over there. So
mm.
uh what was some of the cultural difference that you experienced?
Like the food, I never was really kind of trusting of the food, but like you would have like some pretty crazy food. Sometimes you'd have locals, depending on where you're at, would try to offer you some food and stuff. And I didn't want to take the risk. Plus, I have no idea what's in the food or anything else like that, so I didn't want to take any risk of it. But they always had like some pretty, to me, crazy food. I mean, obviously to them it's not crazy food, but I don't know, it just seemed kind of crazy kind of a thing. And just I don't know, some of the mannerisms of them. You would get to talk to some of the police officers occasionally here and there. Um, the only really locals, like, once in a blue moon, when we were doing like humanitarian aid missions during the first deployment, we would talk to some of the locals, and then during the second deployment, it was pretty much just military police, and then um, some of the interpreters and stuff. But yeah, I mean, just kind of the way they kind of look at things are kind of like different than how we do things, especially like their cultures with like females and uh, just I don't know. They don't seem, they kind of are mesmerized by some of the technology stuff that we have, and at that time, anyways, and so that kind of stuff.
Okay, so was it any bazaars there?
There was some that we drove past I didn't see, but we had one on our fob, both deployments where we had one set up on the fob that was had contractors, civilians that were, cleared to be able to be on post or on the installation to be able to sell stuff. And so the first one was a pretty small one. You'd have little knickknacks, you'd have some fake Rolex watches and some pirated DVDs and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And then the second deployment was a little bit bigger. And that one had like kind of like rugs and kind of a lot of the same stuff, pirate DVDs and pirated Gucci bags and all that kind of stuff, kind of similar to some things that people would see like in Korea too.
Yeah, because have you ever went been to the fob? I mean to the bazaar and actually walked in there?
To just the ones on base, never the ones like in the local areas. I didn't get a check. I didn't check any of those things out.
So what's the experience walking in? What goes on? Because I'm pretty sure I know, but I just want to know like what you gonna say.
Well, ours weren't. I don't know if like you've heard like some crazy stories from some of them. Ours were, you know, controlled by the military, so they were just civilians that were on our fob that were kind of running it. And so you just went in there. It's just like a tent area that had just a bunch of different things for sale, kind of a
Okay,
thing. Yeah.
so it was ran mostly by the military, not the locals.
Well, it would be like locals, but they were like, being employed by the military. So like these were people that got screened and checked and everything like that else to make sure they weren't like any kind of threats. And then they were allowed to like bring their stuff on base to sell it inside the bazaar. And I think they would actually leave it in there and they would just lock it up at night when the bazaar would close. And so they would just have it there all the time and then just kind of run it from on base and had like credentials to get them through the gates to be allowed to come onto the fob to be able to run their little shops inside the bazaar.
Okay, and then so I want to kind of get into once you redeploy back out of your last deployment, how long was it before you made up your mind to say, okay, I want to get out or I want to do something else?
I actually intended to only join the army for 4 years and then get out after 4 years. My intention was to get the military experience, get out and go to college. My first duty station was Kansas, and then I was there for 2 years, and I went to Korea. And so now, when I was in Korea, I was at the point where I didn't have enough time for me to be able to go back to the States. So they were like, well, you're going to have to ETS from Korea. And I didn't want to do that because that probably meant I would have to, move back with my parents back home. I wouldn't be able to really set up any kind of job or anything else like that. So I didn't want to do that. So I re-enlisted so I could go back to the States. So then I re-enlisted, went back to the States. And then when I went back to the States, I only re-enlisted for like a 2-year contract. It was a real short re-enlistment. And then I found out we were deploying and I was going to ETS while we were on deployment. So I would have gotten stop lost. So it was like, well, you can just re-enlist and get a bonus. So I re-enlisted like a bonus. And then when we came back, then that's when they were going to Fort Hood. And if I didn't want to end up on the orders for Korea, then I basically had to re-enlist so I could stay in Fort Carson. And I re-enlisted with a bonus again for another short one for 2 years so I could stay on Fort Carson. And then that was at a point where I was able to kind of get out. So I actually always had like the intention of wanting to get out. I just didn't have the right opportunity to set myself up for like good success kind of a thing until after I'd already been in for like a little over 10 years.
Okay. And then, so what was your plan when you got out? Like, so what year did you transition out?
2010. So
Gotcha.
plan was to go to college, which I did. I did an associate's. I used the GI Bill. Went to local community college, got an associate's for television radio. And then it was while I was doing the degree, I had before I got out of the Army, I went through this training for the non-commissioned officer course for E6. At that time, it's called BNOC. Now it's called ALC.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through this training on Fort Carson, and I ran into a guy that I used to be stationed with in 30 CR. And I was like, "Oh, you work here?" And he was like, "Yeah, I got a job here after I got out of the Army." And I was like, "Oh man, this would be a cool job. You got to let me know if anything opens up." And so after I got out, he let me know, "Hey, there's an opening for an instructor." And so I applied for that. And since I knew somebody on the inside, I pretty much had a open kind of door kind of thing to it, and was able to start working there. And I've been working there actually ever since. It's the only job I've had since getting out of the Army is being an instructor at the Mission Training Complex on Fort Carson.
Okay, so you work at Fort Carson now.
Yeah, so I'm an instructor on there. So I do that during the day, and then YouTube at night.
So what you do at what you do far as a mission at that place?
So my primary system that I'm an instructor for is the JCR and the JBCP system, which is the navigation system inside the vehicles. So I teach soldiers how to use the JCR and how to use the JBCP. I do the operator course, and then we also have a maintainer course and teach them how to kind of like fix it, kind of a thing, to how to do maintenance on the system.
Okay. And what type of system is it?
It's called JCR and JBCP. It's the usually mounted inside the vehicle. It's got the screen, touch screen, and you can send reports. You can send up spot reports on there. You can send up messages. You can see where other friendly icons are at for all the other forces on the battlefield or in the training environment, whichever they're using it for. And so it's that system, the Blue Force Tracker.
So is this something new?
No, it's been around for a while. It was originally the BFT. It was FBCB2 BFT. Then they switched it to the FBCB2 JCR, and then JBCP came around maybe 2016, because it was when I was in Iraq, like in the earlier 2000s, it was still JCR or BFT. And then they got a little bit better with the software, a little bit better with the system and its capabilities, and so it's evolved. So it's probably been around since early 2000s, probably
Okay.
maybe even late 90s actually. It
And
was just in
they
an older version of in the late 90s.
and what vehicles are they usually in?
Now it gets to the point where it's almost in every vehicle almost. I mean, you usually have it like in a Humvee, you can have it inside of an MRAP, inside of a Striker vehicle. A lot of vehicles have it. So anybody that really has any kind of need to want to be able to track where other friendlies are at, that's what the system would be for. So they can do that and also be able to send up the reports and message each other.
Okay. So what you said you was always interested in like film and production and stuff like that, right?
I kind of got into it in the Army. I was in Korea and I bought a video camera so I could kind of film the base in Korea and kind of film the area and show my family what I was doing. And during that process of playing around with recording stuff and using Windows Movie Maker on my laptop that I had at the time, I kind of started like, hey, this is pretty fun. So then I kind of started getting more creative and kind of built on it from there.
So how you get so okay, so we'll talk about this offline for us. Okay, so uh you got in it. So now that y'all kind of got a little brief about Christopher Chaos and stuff that where he's been deployed to and how long he was in the military. You got any advice that you can leave soldiers out there who might be watching?
I'd say definitely like don't get stuck in the barracks. I know a lot of soldiers get so wrapped around like the freedom of being out of the house, right away from your family, and now you're in the barracks or whatever the case is, and they just party like crazy. Like I say don't have fun. That's not what I'm saying. Like you got to have fun, but I've known some soldiers where they would just get so caught up with just partying all the time, and that's all they would do. All their memories from the army was getting drunk and getting wasted in the barracks and playing video games in the barracks. So, sure, do that stuff responsibly, but make sure you take advantage of the area, check out like the sites, wherever you're at. Try to make the best of it. Sometimes, you get stuck at a location that's not the greatest, Fort Hood, Fort Riley, whatever, Fort Polk. You still got to find the cool stuff so that way you have the cool memories, and all your memories of the army isn't like, oh, I got really wasted in the barracks a lot, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there you guys go. So this has been another episode of Soldier Talk the podcast, and I'll see you. Oh, hold on, before I end it. So make sure you guys follow the Instagram at the bottom of the screen. I also have Chris's YouTube channel in the description of this video, and so make sure you guys also like the video and subscribe to the channel. So that's the another episode of Soldiers Talk the podcast, and I'll see you guys in formation.